Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul and I'll be your host this evening. Sorry folks, but one of the rules I've had during these shows is not to eat because someone complained the other day. But unfortunately, folks, you can probably see, there you go. Got lots of pizza left and my dinner hasn't been eaten. So I might be having a bit of a chew during the show tonight, just to try and keep myself going. Sorry folks, but yeah, I've had a bit of a head cold and been trying to get as much sleep as possible and didn't time my alarm clock properly to get my dinner eaten before the show. So sorry about that, folks. We've also got the old hot lemon and honey going. In a couple of days without beers. I mean, this is it's taking the toll on the old system there. Joining me this evening is Stephen Harris. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, thank you, Paul. I was going to say I won't be too critical. Says the guy who's just scoffed two homemade shortbread in a record time. Must be some sort of record for two chunky shortbread in the space of a minute, Paul.
Don't worry, I managed to keep you off screen while you were doing that to keep the professionalism up there. Me, hey, we know I'm just press the button and go and give it a go kind of go. Your preparation and professionalism, which is a bit different from my style, which is why we complement each other, I believe.
Yeah, I was going to say, but it's nonetheless, it's always a privilege and a pleasure to be on the TDM, Paul. So had to get that in.
Thank you very much. So topics for tonight: Rugby World Cup. Yes. It might still be a couple of years away, but there's news around that as to how long it will take and how many players will be allowed. Also, we've got some Six Nations news because whilst I've only got a head cold, a number of the French players have got themselves COVID, so got a little bit worse off than I am. And then obviously Super Rugby news. We've got some last-minute signings as some broadcasting news as well. So all of that to bring you during the show. Good evening to those of you joining us live. Hi Simon, hi Nocturnal Rights. They're watching on YouTube, but you can also watch us on Facebook and Twitter live, or the recordings are available afterwards. And also I'll be putting the audio up as a podcast as well if you want to avoid looking at our lovely faces. But I don't understand why you'd want to do that. Hey, Steve?
Yeah. As you adjust the light.
As he adjusts the light, yeah. So, on to that Rugby World Cup news. Let's start there, I think. They're talking about extending the Rugby World Cup by one more week so that all teams have at least a 5-day turnaround between games. That can only be a good thing from the tournament's point of view and from the tier 2 teams in particular's point of view, as they've had short turnarounds in the past. So yeah, you've got to say that's from that point of view, it's got to be a good move by World Rugby.
Oh, listen, it's only fair. I know we always know when you're looking at a group of 16 or group of 20, there's usually a couple of teams that normally stand out, and you'd pick them probably to go through to the next round. And for the minnows, they've pretty much got to cram all those games virtually into the first 2 weeks or so. Paul, 14 games. In some cases they're playing 4 games in 14 days, which is a bit much to ask. And I'll tell you what, the other thing that probably annoys a lot of people, for some of these minnow teams, they know they can probably lift for maybe 1 or 2 big games where they feel they're an opportunity. But you find that when they come up against some of the bigger nations, they tend to put a second string side out, which is what we've seen. So hopefully we'll probably shy away from seeing that moving forward, just with the opportunity to rest their better quality players before the bigger matches.
And joining us this evening is also Boa. How are you doing, sir?
Very well, thank you. Apologies for a slight but fashionably late entrance. I had some commitments at Monaco Rowers, just had to rush back and forth. But no, great to be on air, and hope everyone is well. Hope everyone's safe. And us Aucklanders, are we in level 1 now, or are we level 2 yet? I've lost track of it.
You're still in level 1, but it's all contact tracing is managing the situation at the moment. So as long as it's the contact tracing remains robust, we'll be all good. But anyway, we'll not head down that one, as I can see we'll probably have different opinions and cause all sorts of uproar.
I'll tell you what, gentlemen, I've noticed the battery on my phone runs out a lot quicker these days because you're constantly scanning apps. Sorry, the QR code. So yeah, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, we all need new batteries. So yeah, we all need a tax break on mobile phones. Is the answer? So there we go. Labour, please give us a tax break on mobile phones, and then we can all have brand new phones with nice strong batteries. So yes, talking about the Rugby World Cup. Yeah, the 5-day turnaround thing is good. But I'm along with nocturnal rights, increasing the squad size by 2 extra players. I'm not for that one, to be honest with you. I think that just helps out teams like England, New Zealand, South Africa that have got the extra player depth, whereas those tier 2 nations, I don't think it's going to help them having an extra 2 players in the squads at all. And I think it just allows basically the big the sort of some of the bigger nations to basically run, probably France as well, to basically run 2 squads in parallel. And so yes, for me, longest tournament. I like the idea of extra players. I'm not a fan of. Boys, your opinions on the 2 extra players into the World Cup squads?
Yeah, look, I think it's about 12 weeks. About 8 to 10 weeks ago, we had the same conversation. I actually made a suggestion that the game day squads need to be expanded by up to 25 players. But Paul, I see your point, because bigger these squads get, it means that you can have a couple of better players, and it will definitely advantage and skew it in the favor of the tier 1 nations. But I think it's something they just need to get a bit more creative. Maybe they have a handicapping system where some of the lesser ranked teams can actually have a wider squad, and they actually have an advantage of having more players as opposed to the top ranked teams. That's something perhaps worth looking at. Stephen, I see you're nodding.
Yeah, boy, you're a genius, mate, because you're obviously a mind reader as well. I was thinking exactly the same thing. How about we cut a bit of slack for the tier 2 nations? So yeah, they can extend their squads, because we all know they probably, a lot of the smaller countries don't have that same sort of depth. To have a couple of extra players on tour would be huge for them. I don't see why the tier 1 nations should have an extra couple of squad members. They've got all the cards stacked in their favours. Most of the top tier nations, all their players play in fully professional competitions. So yeah, let's give a bit of love back to the tier 2 guys.
Yeah, tier 2 guys struggle to get the players released already. To get the player released just to sit on the bench for 6 weeks or however long it is with warm-ups, etc., I think they would find even harder. So we'll see.
Paul, you know how to spoil a good story, brother. Jesus.
I don't worry. I'm going to spoil another good story as well, because this wouldn't be rugby if this had been all done properly, had gone nice and smoothly, and had been all organised. But no. So the reason for this change appears to be that World Rugby has talked to the players' associations. Fantastic. Well done. At last, the players being listened to. Unfortunately, what then World Rugby has gone and done is said, hey, this is a consultation, so I'll reach out to the unions and consult, and then 2 days later, we'll announce it as happening. And you're like, whoa, slow down, cowboy. If you're going to consult, actually consult. And funnily, unsurprisingly, a number of unions, and particularly the clubs in the Northern Hemisphere, have kicked up a stink saying, hang on a second, we need to consult and see what the impact of this is. So yes, World Rugby, 1 step forward, a couple to the side, 1 backwards, and shooting itself in the foot, as usual.
Yeah, well, at best of times, World Rugby, they have some very confusing systems and processes in place. I mean, on paper, it looks great. On a PowerPoint presentation, it's fantastic. And on social media, those little snippets they show on Facebook teasers and trailers, it's fantastic. But the reality is, once they put it into action, because so many different people, depending on the geographic location and depending on the political support and jockeying they have, they either take forever or they rush it through at lightning warp speed, that everything sort of gets lost in transit or permanently gets lost. So I think this is just another case. It's very, very frustrating. And I think it's really important that all key stakeholders, and if they actually say that they're going to have a consultation, have a proper, thorough consultation and actually look at the facts. Don't, it's a good old story. Let's get a good story in the way of the facts, and let's kind of rush it through. I think that's what's actually happened here.
Yeah. Anyway, so and I'm not sure there's much more we could go round and round in circles talking about this for another 20 minutes, but let's move on. Six Nations then gets back into action this weekend, or does it? France, unfortunately, had 5 positive cases, which meant that they had to remove those players from their matchday squad. Follow-up testing showed that 5 more of the players that they had included in their wider matchday squad had also picked up COVID. So that's 10 players who have picked up COVID and been tested positive for France. The Six Nations say that on Wednesday evening, so that'll be Thursday morning our time probably, they will tell us what they're going to do about this. But look, surely they have to postpone for a week at the very least. I just can't see how Scotland versus France can go ahead this weekend.
I agree with you, Paul. The other issue, of course, they were having some of the clubs were failing to release some of the players anyway. So it was going to be a French team, even without the guys who have been pulled out through COVID, wasn't going to be their top squad anyway. But I'm saying that the French have shown they've got a really good group of players, or they've got real depth, should I say. So if it did go ahead, you know what, you'd probably almost make Scotland favourites if they don't have too many changes. But I'm saying that, it would be interesting to see what sort of team the French would put on the paddock.
Yeah, well, I think what France actually did was they chose their 30-odd man squad, 35 I think it was, or 36, 30, something like that, man squad at the beginning of the tournament, and said, okay, if you're not available for the first game, you're not available at all, and we'll put a bubble around it, which is why those other players aren't available. And so rather than having players coming in and out of the bubble, which would have been difficult to manage. So I understand why France decided certain players weren't going to be available. So the only problem then for Scotland is that they have been releasing their players back to their clubs during the week, during the fallow weeks, as World Rugby the World Rugby laws say that they don't have to be released to Scotland. So the French and the English clubs don't release them. So if you delay a week, take it outside of an international window, will Scotland have their players available? And so we come up. So I can understand that there's some sort of, they need a window to do some sort of discussion around that kind of stuff. So that if they do announce it's going to be delayed a week, they actually have crossed all the I's and dotted all the T's beforehand, and actually got it and made sure that all the players are available for Scotland as well. So, but that'll be my guess would be that Scotland will get delayed. But as Simon says, Italy versus Ireland and Wales versus England should be going ahead unless there are more cases that get reported, would be my guess. Any other insights or thoughts, boys?
Well, I was reading a press release from the Scottish Rugby Union, which actually came out a couple of hours ago. They're actually quite hell-bent on trying to see this game happen this weekend. And they've in fact stated that they will continue their preparations as if the game was going to go ahead this weekend. I think the situation is quite insane. I mean, with all these players testing positive left, right, and center, the only game I can actually see happening is, probably a virtual game of Six Nations rugby on PS4 or, Xbox or whatever they call it. Because, I mean, the risk is, tremendous. But at the same time, Paul, as you rightly alluded to with Scotland's situation and the contractual obligations some of their players have, they might be critically disadvantaged if the game is pushed back 1 week. So I can see their point of view, but the reality is if you have, so many players testing positive, I mean, surely from an opposition point of view, you'd want your players to be safe as well. So I think the risk is just, it's too big a risk. And World Rugby and Six Nations need to sort of jump on this and be a little bit more responsible.
Yeah, and look, they might be being. We'll wait and see what they actually say, and as I say, potentially waiting those couple of times for waiting those couple of days before making an announcement isn't necessarily a bad thing, folks. You don't have to always have the answers straight away, but let's hope that they don't. Let's hope they make a sensible decision. Good evening, Batman, who's also joined us as well. There. Been a while since we've had you on the channel watching. Thank you very much for joining us. So that's most of. Oh, the other news from the Northern Hemisphere is there's rumours that the Jaguares will be joining the Pro 14 and playing out of Spain. So an interesting one there Pro 14 or Pro 16, as it will be once all of the South African teams join. So now we're talking Pro 17 maybe at some point. All getting very confusing. Whilst I do want there to be a home for the Jaguares, I do think that they're making a similar mistake to Super Rugby, except Pro 14 or Pro Rugby. Actually, Pro Rugby was an American thing, wasn't it? Pro 14 has never really had the popularity that Super Rugby did have. So, yeah, does it actually matter? I guess is part of the question as to how popular the tournament is. Any thoughts on that one, boys?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a very strong opinion. I think Jaguares make a massive mistake in Argentine rugby actually going backwards, because the quality and intensity of a diluted league is going to be nowhere close to Super Rugby. And given that the Argentinian Pumas came out and upset the All Blacks, first up without 402 days of Test rugby, I think from a tactical point of view, it's very erroneous and it's a massive blunder. They really need to stay in Super Rugby and get most of their players playing Super Rugby so that they can carry that same form line into the international test window. Going into a Pro 17, 19, 20, whatever you want to call it, in my view, is a massive backward step for the Jaguares.
Sure. Go on, Stephen.
I was just about to say, it's a funny old one. They're on the same time zone, aren't they, as the Northern Hemisphere, Paul? Is that correct?
Well, no, that's the whole point. That's why they would move it into. That's why they play in Spain rather than playing in Argentina. Is that A would mean there'd be less travel, and B they'll be in the right time zone as well.
It's interesting. I suppose playing in Spain, if they can build a wee bit of a base and play the same sort of rugby that saw them make the final against the Crusaders a couple of seasons back, because they were building, and I tend to agree with the board to an extent. It's just the quality of rugby that they were playing week in, week out. What are they going to get when they go into the Pro 14? I don't really know, because a couple of those South African sides or the lesser sides, to me are quite poor. And also there's a couple of other sides running around in the Pro 14, especially a couple of the Italian sides, not the best. So yeah, will their standard of rugby fall away? Quite possibly.
But I just think the option of them staying in Super Rugby is zero, right? New Zealand and Australia basically, we don't want you. So hence that option isn't open to them, unfortunately. And COVID. Well, Super Rugby was falling apart anyway, and COVID was really the straw that broke the camel's back, with obviously the removal of any travel. But so I don't think the Jaguares have the opportunity to stay in Super Rugby. They have entered into the Premier League, whatever, I've gone blank as to what it's called now, but the professional league that they set up in South America. Obviously, that is a way lower level of competition, including Chile and Brazil, etc. So I think it is they're looking around and going, okay, who will have us? Super Rugby have said no, essentially. The Gallagher Premiership, I don't believe are interested. The top 14 of the French league are not interested. I don't think Japan are, which basically leaves the Pro 14 as being their only option, apart from the Superliga Rugby America. Thank you, Simon.
Gallagher Premiership made it clear that any new entrants or anyone who wants to get a license to come and play has to come up with 35 million, the equivalent of 35 million US. So I think that was a significant roadblock. And look, I understand that Jaguares and the management have taken the obvious economic choice from the broadcaster's point of view, similar time zones. I get all of that. But my fear is that by going into this league, they will re-engineer their style of play and look to play their traditional kicking game and go back to the Argentinian way of the old. Whereas what we saw against what they brought to the table against the All Blacks, it was fearless, hard-running, big big hits in the middle, and they actually beat the All Blacks at their own game. So my genuine fear is, for the sake of all the obvious, I wouldn't say softer, but the more pragmatic options, they're actually going to take a step back as far as intensity and level of competition goes, and they will probably end up re-engineering what they're doing and go back to that more traditional safety-first conventional game, which by and large, come 2023, it will have an impact on what Argentina and the Pumas do.
Yeah, I'd from a quality of rugby point of view, I understand where you're coming from a commercial and from an availability of what they can do. I just think they're just taking whatever option they have. The only other option that jumps out, obviously, is playing in the Major League Rugby, which again, whilst it's an improving standard, it's still a lower standard, and also clearly the USA has got issues with their own COVID at the moment as well. So then, boys, that leaves us with the last 40 minutes to talk about Super Rugby, which is obviously kicking off this weekend with Super Rugby Aotearoa. Let's kick off with some, I guess, well, that's hopefully positive news. Bryce Heem has signed for the Blues. Stephen, actually, and Boa, both of you as Blues fans, happy with that signing? Do you think he's going to make matchday squad, bring much to the team?
Firstly, it's one that caught me by surprise, I've got to say. He's 32 years old, just gone 32 on the 18th of January. So, you know, he's certainly no spring chicken. I would have thought they might have looked within the Blues region. I mean, say somebody like, for example, Jared Page, who was selected for the Blues last year, wasn't selected this year, but I still thought he had a pretty good season for North Harbour. I can remember him scoring 3 tries in one of the games he played. Might have been against the Hawke's Bay Magpies, a game that NZ Sport Radio covered last year. And he looked quite sharp, got a lot of pace, and I kind of wondered why they didn't really go back on there. But I suspect there might be a little bit going on in the backgrounds with Auckland. I believe that Bryce Heem is also signed for Auckland Mitre 10 Cup, which is, once again, that's another surprise when you've got some really good young wingers running around in Auckland. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I'm sure Boa probably has a similar sentiment to me.
Yep, well, you read my mind. You are the genius on this instance. You know my view on this. I just cannot simply stand these lateral hires, these imports. It's not the right message, especially for homegrown talent in the local union. There's so many very talented young wingers, you know, on the cusp, especially in the Auckland club rugby circuit, and also, you know, spreading your tentacles to North Harbour and Northland. You know, there is enough talent. So why on earth, you know, you go sort of doing this sort of thing is, I don't know. I'm not a fan, Stephen. I'm not a fan of this sort of thing. I think the franchises really have to go shopping in their own catchment area, and the more they do this, the more disheartened some of these grassroots players who are on the cusp, wanting to get that breakthrough, are going to be. And also, you know, with this whole so-called revamping of this talent identification program, I mean, it really goes against the grain, doesn't it, guys?
Yeah.
You know, so...
Well, I was going to say, I could understand it if he was playing Mitre 10 Cup here in New Zealand and he's brought in his injury cover. I can get that, because he may have earned his place through good form in Mitre 10 Cup. But boy, that one's just really and truthfully it's come out of the blue, even more so than a Joe Marchant selection, where Joe came over here as a young guy, and man, he was just starting to look really good, get used to the style of the way Super Rugby was played. And he brought a different sort of flavour as well, you know. Yeah, no disrespect to the player Bryce Heem, but no, totally. It's somewhere I wouldn't have went.
Yeah. There's plenty of good wingers in these 3 provinces who could have put their hand up, but you know, again, it's a bit disappointing. Nothing against Bryce Heem, you know, he's lovely guy, lovely player, but not the right selection in my view as well.
That's the best thing he said all night, isn't it, Bar?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. The host of the show is on mute.
Yeah, I know.
Host Joe's on mute while he was coughing his guts up. Yes. I guess the only point you might make, look, he's played in Toulon. Obviously, came up through the Auckland system initially, but has gone overseas, played Worcester, Toulon, etc. Is he brings some experience to that back line now that. So what if you look at the backs, TJ Fiani, Rico Iwani, Tanalea Tilea, in those centres there. So he adds a bit of experience, I guess, there. You look at the outside backs in Clark, Lamb, Marsilia, Tori, Amoni Nawaria. There's Zan Solomon. You're looking at that back line is very inexperienced in the outside backs. I mean, obviously Caleb Clark has played for the All Blacks, but he's had one year of Super Rugby. Mark Talia only whereas you've got like 4 guys there who have got next to no super, 4 or 5 guys who've got next to no Super Rugby experience. So I guess from an experience, they've already got a lot of young players in there. So maybe it's just to bring some experience into the squad.
I suppose the other thing, Paul, I was just sort of thinking about originally the Argentinian boy who was going to come as a chocolate. Oh, I won't even begin to say
Chocobares.
Yeah. Well, he was going to come across, and he was a centre. So maybe they actually see somebody like Bryce Heem as a centre, as opposed to a winger, because it's that midfield where I actually think the Blues are a little thin if they were to have injuries.
Yeah, I think he's in as a centre, not as a winger. They've already got a stack of outside backs. So I do, and you've also got players like Perifetta who can play full back as well. So yeah, it is centre where they need, or it is in the midfielders where they need the cover.
I also saw Mirai Formai playing in that head-out game at centre on the weekend as well. Now, Formai played midfield for Hawke's Bay last year. Came into the second 5 position actually. Now that I think about it, in fact, he actually kept Danny Tuala out of the team towards the latter part of the season when Hawke's Bay were on their run. So I do wonder if they also see him as a midfielder as well, or is he just primarily in the team as injury cover?
I think he's purely he's not. He might be a extended squad practice player, but he's not in as a he's not in as a regular player. Shut the coat. They won't catch Harim. Won't catch him. Says Ashwin there. Obviously that's from a few years ago, I believe. I'm not sure. It doesn't quite have. I'm guessing. I'm not. I've seen much of him recently. I'm guessing he doesn't quite have the pace he used to have, but I could be wrong.
Well, the thing is with him, I mean, if he's going to make any sort of impact with the Blues, he's going to really have to step up his game quite significantly, coming from Toulon and showing some, good form lines. Because based on what we saw the game of 3 halves in the warm-up, boy, those Blues, man, they look good. I have to say, I didn't expect them to win. I was actually expecting them to get a bit of a thumping, especially given that they couldn't train together as a team with Auckland going into level 3. But boy, they played some really good rugby, and that form line in Mitre 10 at NPC level, with guys like Jonathan Ruru, clearly, it's starting to come through. And so maybe finally we're starting to see some of that tiered system run-on form showing, in a very systematic manner. So the pressure is really going to be on guys like Bryce Heap, and I would be surprised, at training, he's going to find it really, really hard. So I really hope the Blues know what they're doing here.
So the big question then, Boa, after that, after talking up the Blues so much, Batman asks us, will the Blues win it this year? You've just talked them up.
Okay, simple answer is no. They would be the off-season, pre-season champions. Crusaders, odds on pop. But my long shot, and I'm starting to like them more and more, the Highlanders. So Crusaders, a clear-cut top pick and favourites to win. Highlanders, long shot. Blues, they'll probably have a few good games, but I really can't see them winning.
Yeah, I mean, the Blues have held the Brisbane Tens for about 3 years now. So, I mean, pre-season champions, as you say. Stephen?
Oh, I'd like to say yes, but that would all be with my my heart, not my head. Yeah, this is our year.
You sound like a Warriors fan, Ashwin.
No, I was about to say there's another oval ball team across the way. I'll tell you what, I'll put it out there. Yeah, of course they're going to do it this year. It's going to be their year. Come on, get up.
7-1, I think, on the odds. TAB.
Yeah.
I don't know what the books across the Tasman are doing, but yeah.
Paul's
Yeah,
taping
Chris.
this, and he'll play it back to me at the end of the season.
Well, look, guys, one thing I do have to say is if the Blues focus on a bit of goal kicking this year, and this is my bugbear right throughout, and a really good example was that Waratahs versus the Reds game. How many times did the Waratahs not kick for goal? And this is something I think the local super teams need to get onto. And when was the last time the Blues had a consistent goal kicker who could actually win them games purely on goal kicking? So that is an element they can actually focus and compete on. Guys like Stephen Porofeta, obviously. So there are all these sort of little idiosyncrasies, but I guess when you come up against the big guns like the Crusaders, you're going to have to score tries and lots of them, or score points and not concede tries. But based on the current squads and the form lines, very difficult to see them doing that.
Yeah, I mean, Terry Black's a decent goal kicker. But let's move down State Highway 1 to the Chiefs. And they have announced that Brad Webber will be co-captaining with Sam Cane this year. Nice reward for Brad Webber, who I thought would be heading overseas when he didn't get that the All Blacks recognition at the Rugby World at some previous. Actually, I don't know where it was now, but he was missing out to Triple T and players. And I thought he was going to head overseas. But he stuck around 40's corner, got himself back into the All Blacks reckoning, and got himself the captaincy co-captaincy for the Chiefs as well. Good reward for him, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. He's come a long way since that time we was left out of that squad that when they split up and they took them up to Japan. I don't even think he actually, if we recall, he didn't make that side. I think even the likes of Mitch Drummond and Bryn Hall were all ahead of him in the pecking order. But, credit to the guy. He's actually he's absolutely stuck it out and hung in there at all levels of rugby where he could have just simply walked away from the game, and full credit to him for hanging in there. But in terms of that All Black jersey, boy, he's going to have some guys snapping at his heels this year because, I was really impressed with a few of the halfbacks that I saw on show on the weekend. Even the likes of the much maligned Jonathan Rudu played a really good game for the Blues on the weekend. Sam Knock was excellent, but boy, a kid that really stuck his hand up to me was Xavier Rowe from the Chiefs. Obviously Paul highlighted him about a year or two ago, young Xavier Rowe. But he's going to have all these guys snapping right at his heels, not to mention Folau Fakatava as well down at the Highlanders. So it's exciting times, but mate, credit to him for being loyal.
Yep.
Yeah, no question about it. And you're right. I think the guy who caught my eye in the warm-ups was actually Xavier Rowe, because every time you actually watched the game, the name you heard was Xavier Rowe. So I think there's going to be a lot of competition, and especially for the incumbent All Blacks, where their minutes get managed on the high-performance contracts. They will have to make the most of their minutes. They will have to make the most of their minutes because there'll be a lot of guys snapping at their heels. And this season, looking at some of the preseason fitness work most of these guys have been doing, I've been looking at some of the test numbers. Boy, they're really, pushing hard. They're pushing the standards higher and higher. So what this means is now there's no such thing as a traditional preseason. There's no instance where guys take time off, they just go on the Christmas cookies and eat too much or whatever. These guys, they're training pretty much 365 days a year, ready for action. So each and every player, they're going to have to make some impact. And and also you got to understand, with the intensity stepping up, hopefully no injuries come in the way, because there will always be someone to take their position.
Yep. Where does that leave Triple T for the Chiefs? Well, yeah, Dan, a very good question. Maybe he should have headed down to the Hurricanes. They've got a gap. Or, yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, obviously, he's going to have to front up.
I like, some of these halfbacks. It's a real interesting pose of the question of who's that second, third, and fourth halfback now that TJ has gone offshore. Obviously, you've got the elder statesman there, Aaron Smith, still probably perceived or seen as your number one halfback. Weber is there or thereabouts. Of course, he went to a World Cup in 2019, but also Folau Fakatava, who made some waves last year for Hawke's Bay. Listen, he's a very good footballer. I just wonder how much game time he's going to get behind Aaron Smith. That could be the issue for him. I like what the Blues bring to the table. They've got three halfbacks there. Forgot about Finlay Christie as well. So there's going to be some real serious competition for that number one spot at the Blues. And I'll tell you what, I think it could be Sam Knox' year. We know what a good game. What I liked about him, especially in that performance against the Crusaders, he actually got himself into really good positions for his runners. And he's thinking a little bit. He's not basically sitting on the ball too much, which is something that he used to do in the past. And then when you saw Xavier Rowe, very, very similar. Those are the two guys I see pushing for that second and third spot, boy.
Oh, no question about it. I think Sam Knock is your classic example, what I call a hybrid player. He's using some of those 7 skills. He's brought it into the 15s game, and he's really focused on his distribution aspect of the game, especially when you have fast ball carriers and guys who can attack with. As a halfback, your job is to give them quality, front foot ball. And I think he's doing that really well. And combine that with his, very snappy, sharp reflexes around the fringe and his sevens background. I think he's going to be one of the breakthrough surprises this season. And that's a very, very astute observation from you, Stephen Harris.
Thank you very much. So you're obviously getting my Texas boy. But Paul, is there anybody out of those halfbacks that we mentioned that stand out for you? As he's eating his pizza and on mute.
Oh, me? That's what I thought you were talking about Boa. So you said Paul with you. You're a bit quieter. I didn't mean to move my microphone close enough. But yeah, look, I mean, Fakatava's great. I mean, his hair's fantastic, isn't it? For no other reason. We've got it. If we're going to show New Zealand culture to the world via the All Blacks, then we need to get someone like him in, just because we've got to bring the mullet back. We've got to show people this is how they should be cutting their hair. So from that point of view, yes, Fakatava has to be in the All Blacks purely just to bring the hair styles back to the world. Absolutely. So look, I think Fakatava will get a lot more game time this year. I think they're going to try and nurse Aaron Smith through to the next Rugby World Cup, which means that he won't have to play the full 80 anymore. And I think that's a good sign for Fakatava. Look, he's got someone there who he can learn from, and we've seen how well. I mean, Aaron Smith isn't going to feel challenged by Fakatava. He's going to be more than happy to help the guy out as much as possible. We've seen how he's worked with TJ Perenara. He's not felt challenged by him. He's worked with him. So I think actually it's a great place for Fakatava to be down there.
Paul, I was going to say, for me, my only little doubt in the back of my mind is we've seen how good Fakatava is at Mitre 10 level, but this is another step up again, and you can guarantee there'll be a lot of coaches that have basically done a lot of work on him, and he'll get a whole lot of pressure stuck on him. That apart from when he did last year, I'm obviously still bitter about that loss last year in the championship final. But no, only time will tell.
Yeah, he's also been down there in the Highlanders for 2 years now, hasn't he? So he knows the setup. He knows what it means to be a Super Rugby player. Whereas you players like Xavier Rowe coming in, it's their very first season at this level. I think he's got a steep learning curve. And that's why Fakatava will be in a better position. He's someone that's still not known much by the fans of Super Rugby, but someone will come through. Talking of fans of Super Rugby, whilst we have wonderful coverage brought to us by Sky TV And yes, we are available if you would like to buy the show and put it down on Sky TV here in New Zealand. And obviously with Stan Sports stepping things up in Australia from Fox. But outside of that, basically, no one can watch it. There are no TV rights in Europe. There are no TV rights in the USA. This is now last time the bump in TV rights, the extra money, came from predominantly the UK, where BT or British Telecom and Sky TV over there were fighting it out for rugby. Now they don't have the same. Now they're not throwing the same sort of cash at sport. They're not fighting it out anymore. I think that Sanzar have basically realised that, finding out now that that they're just not going to get the cash that they were going to get previously, and their response has been, well, if you don't pay us this much, we're not going to give you you can't show it full stop. It seems wrong to me that Sanzar have left it so late and have not managed to get a TV deal in those important markets.
It is, and it is ridiculous, isn't it? Because connectivity and the access to streaming on live is stronger and better than ever. And yet here we are with Sanzar not having the ability to strike a global deal. So it just goes to show you got to be a little bit more savvy, especially from an administrator's point of view, on how you deal with getting a global reach and a global audience. So it's it's gonna be a tricky situation here, a bit of a catch-22 for Sanzar. So,
and not only that, they've been in their partner Sky. Sky have gone out and bought Rugby Pass, which is a streaming service that can stream globally, even if you have to use a VPN at places. And what's happened? Rugby Pass no longer has Super Rugby, so has Sky basically bought Rugby Pass just to kill it, because it was competition. I don't know, but it just seems at a time when very few other places can show sport with crowds that we have a premium product here, and yet we're hiding it from the world.
So here's something quite interesting, gentlemen. Sky TV came out with revised earnings statement today. Actually, the stock market, they've actually increased their revenue by about 230%, but their profitability has dropped by about 7%. That just goes to show, and the main reason is that people who purchase streaming spend a lot lesser than those who obviously subscribe to satellite TV. So there's a bit of work to be done there. But I see what you're saying, Paul. It's probably a little bit more than a conspiracy theory, and it's probably some business tactics that just want to kill Rugby Pass altogether. Who knows?
You kind of, when you speak conspiracies, you kind of wonder with this suggested new sponsor coming on board if there's a little bit more than meets the eye to this, if you know what I mean. All of a sudden, you're getting this really massive finance company supposedly coming on board, but you don't want to tender out your code. It's if there's a strategy behind this, man, it's either brave or very foolish.
No, good point there. You're not okay. We're not talking about sponsor here. We're talking about investor. As what Stephen's referring to here is Silver Lake, I think, is a company out of the USA that is looking at investing and buying X% of all future revenue for the All Blacks. Maybe you are right there that is that they don't want to sell, or they don't want to sell anything, at least any long-term deals, because Silver Lake might be wanting to do something themselves. Good point. I hadn't put two and two together for that one. But yes.
They are an American conglomerate, and kind of like what Donald Trump wants to do. He's been banned from all the social media platforms. Chances are he's going to start his own little gig. So who knows? Silver Lake might be taking a leaf out of that book.
Yep. But as Simon says, the A-League show they gave on YouTube, where they don't have TV deals, and that might have been an option. Yeah, it's to show it on YouTube in the short term, and then when Silver Lake come on board, move it across to their new sparkling silvery platform. Who knows?
you just get the feeling there's a bit of a strategy behind this.
Slow down, Stephen. I mean, the strategy. We're talking about rugby. We're talking rugby union administrators here. The strategy. Wow.
Yeah, I think there is a strategy behind this madness.
I wouldn't be one bit surprised if AllBlacks.tv come up with their own streaming app and all this, because there's a Super Rugby is the most easily sellable product right around the world as far as quality of rugby goes. There is such a demand where you have players representing New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa. There's a global fan base, so it's a very simple thing. So I sincerely hope that there is some strategic thinking behind this, because you're not letting the golden goose lay the egg. That's just my take on this whole thing, by not going global with your TV deal yet.
Yeah, look, it's one of the. It's I guess the other problem is that, and I don't know if the deal has changed because of COVID, but the New Zealand Rugby owns a share of Sky TV, and that's part of was part of the latest TV rights. So it becomes a very much a conflict of interest whenever TV rights come up next time in New Zealand, if you own one of the people who's bidding. So yeah, there's all sorts of strange goings on, and yes, I personally think that moving themselves away from Sky and going onto a streaming service would have been the right way to go, but a bit like Disney has done with a lot of its things, or HBO is doing. You're not going to be seeing things like Game of Thrones through Sky anymore. You're going to have to go straight to HBO for it. The New Zealand Rugby could have done something similar, but
yeah, for all we know, it might end up on Netflix live streaming. Who knows? So let's wait and see.
Yep.
Maybe you heard it here first. Netflix.
The one place it won't be is Netflix. Netflix show no interest in sport at all up to date. The most likely place for it is Amazon, who have done All Blacks documentaries, etc. already. So that looks like that to me would be the most likely one if we're looking at a current streaming platform rather than their own one. Boa, you took some interest in the new laws, obviously, and apparently there's a bit of an issue with the referee challenge during the Crusaders game.
Oh, good Lord. Where do I start? Here we go again. Yeah. Trying to complicate simplicity. Well, this is the red card challenge where the captain, I think it was Cody Taylor on that point, he felt that the...
try challenge, not red card challenge.
Sorry, it was a referee's call. The thing is, you have to actually be very clear and simplify this whole situation, because what actually happened was he challenged the referee's call, and then the referee and the TMO went and looked at it, but they looked at the wrong part of the footage. And then after the game, the referee apologizes to the Crusaders, saying, "Hey, we got it wrong." So all which needs to really happen is the referee says, "All right, skipper, what do you want me to have a look at?" And then the skipper says, "I feel that they're offside at the line." Okay, TMO, can you have a look at this, please? Skipper's challenge. Is he right or am I wrong? And then they look at it and say, "Yep, no, you were wrong." I mean, that's not even a question. That's a rhetoric answer. And then life goes on. But, there's 100 different variations in different competitions. If they're going to have what you call ELVs, experimental low variations, I think it's really important, especially if with Super Rugby coming in, you have some uniformity in Australia and in New Zealand, because if they have a trans-Tasman competition, they can try the same thing. This is just causing more confusion. It's complicating this whole thing, and it's just adding more stupidity. And as I keep saying, complicating what should be a very straightforward, simple process. What I did like, I have to say though, is that the referee actually came out and apologized. That must be like that I've never heard of that sort of happening, because referees, they know everything. They're like the encyclopedia. It's like, what's that T-shirt that says, "I don't need an encyclopedia. My wife knows everything." So it's the same thing with referees, isn't it?
Oh dear. I was going to say, just on what I saw, the weekend with the game of three halves. I know Paul Williams there was a lot of whistle in that game, and boy, a lot of breakdown penalties, especially over the ball penalties, and also a lot of the players. I know the Crusaders gave away a lot of penalties in terms of the offsides, and there was the comment basically thrown out there if that was actually a deliberate ploy by the Crusaders just to give away that many penalties just to see what their defensive patterns were like. But boy, that's something that you wouldn't want to do in a full on guy to give that sort of advantage away. It puts the rest of your squad under a lot of pressure.
And also administrators and the lawmakers need to understand fans and TV audiences. They don't watch the game to, listen to a lecture from the referee or the referee blowing the whistle or, come up with all these 100 different explanations for what should be a very straightforward thing, especially at the breakdown. Now, this was discussed last season. You have one go, you have to maintain your feet. Release, that's it. One goal, that's it. And now all these teams know this, but they keep testing the referee's patience. So the simple answer is pre-game, the ref says, look, I'm going to only tolerate it twice. If I have to say tackler release 3 times, you're going to the bin. It's that simple. But, they're policing the wrong part of the game. They've let critical parts of the game slip. And then when it slips, trying to make it up by, giving everyone a public lecture and trying to do some coaching on live TV. It's just not working. And then to complicate and confuse matters more, we've got all these experimental laws which haven't really been thought out properly. And they've clearly not done their test runs. And there's clearly a lack of training and education around this. And the end result is, we got it wrong. But I have to say, I'm pleased they got it wrong in a preseason as opposed to a game-changing decision in a very critical game. Agreed.
One thing I would like to say, look, I finished my pizza during the show, and I didn't even see me eating on screen. So there we go. I'm happy. No, you're right. I mean, the big thing here is, it's happened pre-season, and it's the good thing about it happening pre-season is also that we've all become now aware. We just thought it was kind of like the captain just goes, "I think something was wrong. Go check it, please." No, he's now going to walk up and explain what he thinks is wrong clearly enough that the referee understands him. And that was the problem here. He said offside at the line-out. They checked the offside. There was no offside at the line-out. There was offside at the ruck just after the line-out. And that small technicality was what went wrong there. And so it's a learning point for both the Crusaders and the referee and us as well. I think in some ways, I think it's good that it's happened because we have a better understanding of the law now going into Super Rugby.
Paul, I was going to say that the Cody Taylor one, I thought there was a bit of Hail Mary about it, about the actual referral, because they were down by 7 points. But I thought the most bizarre thing in that game was right at the end where they needed to keep the ball alive, and one of the players actually touched it down the in-goal area, which effectively ended the game. So it was bizarre. Obviously, listen, it's just a muck around game, but you have a go, you have a crack, even if it was from 100 meters. So it was bizarre why the player would actually touch it down, because that effectively ended the game. But you are both right. It's good that these little things that need to be ironed out are happening in preseason contests.
Well, I have no sympathy for the refs, so I'm probably going to be, I find it utterly ridiculous that what should be a very simple, straightforward thing gets so complicated. All you have to say is, all right, which part do you want me to look at? All right, well, it was the line out. I think number 2 was offside. All right, well, okay, TMO, was number 2 offside? Yes or no? And you remember a few years ago, they said, is there any reason I should not award a try and all that kind of nonsense? Just ask simple questions. And this is what really gets to me, this whole complications and all these weird questions people ask. And after time, people watching the game have no idea what the hell is going on. So let's hope, for the sake of rugby, for the sake of sanity, all this is filtered out. And hopefully the refs are watching this. Yeah, I know you guys watch.
And it's nice that those that they've changed it from, as you say, any reason I cannot, to say my on-field decision is this. and that has been cleared up. It is much clearer now, which is good to see, at least. Moving on then, last piece of Super Rugby news. Did you spot that there has been that rugby is going the way of football, and that there's been a transfer from the Toronto Arrows to the Reds of Aotearoa, and money was transferred to pay for the player to move over. I mean, hey, is this the future of Major League Rugby, to be a development place where Super Rugby then buys its players from? Do you think, boys?
Gee, was that article in the back of page 13, right down on the right-hand corner there, Paul? I really wouldn't have known if you hadn't mentioned it to me. But listen, I actually think a loan system or transfer system, especially during the season, is a great thing. How many times have we seen teams? We saw the Chiefs last year with so many injuries, and boy, I bet you they would have loved to have utilised a player that might have been sitting in the blue stocks, not getting any game time, or the Hurricanes game stocks. I think it's a good thing. Seriously.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it. I think more opportunity for more players rather than bench warm, because the reality, guys, is in Super Rugby there'll be a bunch of players, the second tier guys in the wider squad. All they basically, and this my take on it, they're just running tackle bags. They mimic what the opposition do. Say, for example, if the Blues are playing the Hurricanes this weekend, so those guys would be mimicking what the Hurricanes do, and the Blues guys go end up smashing them. So it's a weird place to be in, and sometimes it can be quite disheartening. So this sort of opportunity, this window, really gives some of these players that opportunity which they're not getting, and who knows, someone will take it, and we could see some potential stars break through. Let's hope.
So there you go, folks. Richie Aotearoa is the potentially the vanguard of not the vanguard, anyway, whatever it's called, the trailblazer of transfers in rugby. We'll have to see if that pans out.
If you ask Eddie Jones, he'll say it's just the import. The star import.
Cool. Any other? I've gone through my list of things, boys. Any other points that before the weekend?
What was I too late for the 5 red cards from the weekend gone by?
Oh, geez. Okay, then. Well, yes. Okay. So, for those of you that aren't aware, folks, because obviously it's a New Zealand show, over in the Gallagher Premiership, there were 5 red cards, 2 in one game and 3 in another game. From what I understand, because I've not seen them. Looking on Twitter, 4 of them are dead cert red cards. One of them is most likely a red card with potential mitigating circumstances. But 4 of them, from what I understand, dead cert red cards. Now, Bo's going to say, hey, look, when are the players going to learn? Apparently, some of the players come out and said, hey, this is a wake-up call for us. So who knows? Maybe, Bo, next weekend we won't have so many.
No, I can guarantee you that won't be the case, because I talk to a lot of these professional coaches and high performance guys on a very, very regular basis. The reality is players at top level get encouraged to tackle, which is what you call crest on crest. So basically, crest on crest, you're going nice and high at shoulder level. Even despite World Rugby coming out publicly and saying that, look, guys, we've got to sort of tackle at a safe, and that's why I've come up with safe tackle framework, obviously. But now the message is not getting through, because high performance coaching is all about results. And because it's results driven, coaches are willing to risk the safety element. And this is my opinion, guys. I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth. This is my opinion. Based on what I'm seeing, they are willing to risk the safety. And, look, maybe they'll just get hurt a little bit. Maybe we'll give a penalty away, because by going nice and high, they avoid 2 things. Number 1, the offload. And number 2, they believe, or the hypothesis is that they don't have to commit too many people into the tackle situation, i.e. they can fan players out. So unless those 2 elements and that part of the game changes, nothing will get through. Coaches are in denial. The reality is we need to have a complete overhaul and look at how we view and how we coach and how we educate coaches and players at junior grades on how they progress as far as tackling goes. Until this is sorted out, we will have a fatality on the field. That much I can guarantee you, because the way high-performance players are encouraged to go nice and high, it's only a matter of time. A shoulder on the back of the head, we will see a very serious injury or fatality.
Yeah, we've already seen fatalities, but in the game in France last year, which led to last year or the year before, that led to a trial there saying all tackles had to be below the waist. I've not heard how that trial went in the lower of France.
Very, very, very successful. It really opened the game up. Lots of points were scored, and this is where high performance will come and say, no, this is not going to work, because they get all jittery. Because with my proposed trial, where you have a line across the sternum and the biceps, there's lots of cheering and say, "Oh, this is beautiful." But soon as we come to the top levels, everyone gets a little bit uncomfortable. Why? Because they don't want to give up this advantage of going nice and high. So, as strange as that may sound,
it's we'll have to. It's World Rugby is trying to lower it, as you say. So far, we aren't seeing much success at all, if any. With that, we haven't seen a lot of technique changes. What we are seeing, though, is that the response to this on social media is becoming much more okay. That's a red for the clear outs and things. Whereas probably 2 years ago, it was like, oh, what? No, that's you're ruining the game. So I think public awareness or public opinion of what is a red is changing slowly, but it's not happening quickly enough.
It is, Paul. At this rate, it'll probably take about 17 years. But yeah, in that 17 years, we will see a horrendous amount of injuries, lots of concussions. And I really don't know why people what they're waiting for. I get that there are lots of traditionalists. For example, when I made my proposal of putting a line across the shirts, a lot of people said, we can't do that on our jerseys years and years and years. Well, if the same logic was applied to things like, cell phones and cars, we'd still be, on a horse cart or something like that. So we have to get with the times. We have to look to innovate. And for me personally, it's been very, very frustrating trying to get this simple logic through to administrators, because in one hand they're saying let's be safe, but on the other hand they're just not willing to make the relevant changes so that the game is safer in a practical sense, where we don't alienate fans, players, coaches, all these stakeholders.
Yep. And you're preaching to the converted here, but as I say, it's interesting to hear that the trial they did in France went well. So that's interesting to say. I heard it was happening, but there's been next to no response from that.
That is because the top level coaches are not in favor of that. So it just got killed. The problem here is that they won't have two versions of the sport: top level, and then let's police it in a slightly different way, and then let's just kind of water this version down so that we can show the whole world that everything is nice and safe at the lower levels. But soon as you go to the elite level, everything you've learned down there goes out the window, which is unfortunate. But that is the truth, guys. I have to say this because this has been one of the key things of my findings and the data, especially talking to the people and seeing what is being done at training and what happens you guys see it anyway. And the red cards are evidence enough.
Yep. So we'll see. I'm expecting there to be plenty of red cards, and probably also red cards. It was good to see that at least in Australian Super Rugby, there've been some attempt to bring it down. Obviously, the red card we got there was for tip tackling at the weekend, which was an absolute open and shut case. So that was obvious, and we'll see how it goes with Super Rugby Aotearoa this weekend and Super Rugby AU as well. Will there be a North versus South game this year, boys? I think this comes down to if we have June internationals or not. I've got a funny feeling that we'll still have the 14-day quarantine, and I'm not sure that any of the Northern Hemisphere teams will want to quarantine for 14 days. So I expect the July tests to probably be called off. So I don't see why we wouldn't have a North versus South game again this year.
Yep, very, very correct, Batman. Yeah, it's more than likely it's going to happen because you have to fill the schedule in some form or shape. And Paul, very astute there by saying, the 14-day quarantine period is going to have some ramification. And of course, we don't know whether we'll have future flare-ups around the world with COVID, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 75th wave, whatever it is. So, more than likely, north v south.
Yep. Will we actually see cross-hemisphere rugby between say, the All Blacks travelling up to the Northern Hemisphere? Possibly, because I can see that they would be exempt from a from a quarantine because they're coming from such a place with no COVID, or relatively little COVID, which is probably say now at the moment. So I think there's a possibility of internationals happening. I just can't see it happening inbound into places like Australia and or New Zealand because of that 14-day window. Thank you, boys. Any other points?
I thought I'd just check out the odds for the weekend. The Highlanders playing $2.95, the Crusaders $1.36, and the Blues and the Hurricanes currently split, both playing $1.87. But that's probably not a bad value bet on the exactly. That's probably not a bad bet on the Highlanders at $2.95. I'm just trying to find the odds for the outright winner for Super Rugby, but I'll look up those and have those ready for you next week. But I would imagine it'll probably be the Crusaders, the hot favourites, the Blues in 2, Highlanders 3, Chiefs 4, and Hurricanes 5. That's I'm thinking what the pecking order is via the TAB. That's my that's what I think the TAB odds are going to be. But I'll get those for you next week. Been fun, guys.
Yeah, I think Highlanders half-time, full-time double. That's great value. And Crusaders, as you know, perennial slow starters as well. Maybe all that has changed with this whole shrinking of the numbers and this Super Rugby Aotearoa, because there's hardly any time to put a foot wrong. But at $2.95, wow, that's tremendous value.
I think the Crusaders perennial slow starters was very much a I've gone blank. Who was the last coach? Was a Blackadder.
Scotty Blackadder.
Yep, it was a Blackadder thing under Scotty Robinson. He hasn't. I think he's won his first game every Super Rugby season. So I think he's got rid of that one. I think that was very much a Blackadder thing, rather than a Razor thing.
Well, I've just found while we were just chatting there, Paul, I've got the overall odds for the grand final winner of Super Rugby Aotearoa. Crusaders paying $2, the Blues $4.20, the Hurricanes $5.50, the Highlanders $7.50. Boy, that's a good value bet. I can see Boa, he's probably going to get his fingers straight onto the TAB account after this. And,
I have actually.
and the Chiefs are at $9. But for me, the value bet there is definitely the Highlanders at $7.50. Maybe a lazy 20.
So they had that reputation before Blackadder. Maybe the Crusaders did, but they definitely continued with Blackadder and stopped after him. Apparently, Simon says that Italy will tolerate 14-day periods to play matches that guarantee fixtures. So maybe we'll have a three-match test tour between Italy and the All Blacks. Italy were due to come this year for at least one game, I think.
Yeah, I think, look, Italy will do pretty much anything if you ask them to quarantine for 100 days, because they're on the verge of getting kicked out. So they want to be in everyone's good books. So no doubt they will come, quarantine, get a good old-fashioned thumping, go back. I don't know. Do they have to do another 14-day quarantine in Florence or whatever? So be it. So, yeah.
Yes, I think yes, you're quite right. They would, yes, we would get a good old a beating in both those games. But anyway, so thank you very much, Boa. Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you very much, everyone who has joined us live and everyone who does listen to us as the podcast as well. And don't forget, you can support New Zealand Sports Radio. Just go to patreon.com/NZ Sport Radio to help support us to bring you this absolutely wonderful content. We'll be back on tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. with the standoff show, which is your NRL show, and back on Thursday evening at 8 p.m. previewing all of the Super Rugby games. So hopefully we should have all of we'll definitely have the Australian lineups. Hopefully we'll have the New Zealand ones as well.